Welcome, everyone. Last day of the conference. How was the energy in the room? Is it still good? Good, great. Okay. I would like to welcome both our in-person and virtual audience for this session. Being people-focused in a data-driven world, the secret sauce to ROI realization. As you continue to invest in technology to drive innovation and become data-driven, how do you ensure that you're realizing business value from those investments? Well, the secret sauce is people dimension. Culture, mindset, biases, all of these things. So this session will address the people dimension and how it's impacting business value in your organization. A few housekeeping details. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available part of the symposium proceeding, and there will be Q&A at the end of the session. Our speaker is Beth Montag Schmaltz. Beth is a senior partner at West Monroe Partner Operation Excellence Practice. She's a researcher, thought leader, practitioner, most importantly, a pioneer in change management. She co-founded 71 and Change and People Firm. Beth, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. My title, I prefer to go by change geek, if you will. I have been doing this my entire career across multiple industries, across multiple functions. And now here we are in this data science moment. And change seems to be pretty hot. Hot topic. Okay, so we're going to talk only about people. And I'm taking a little bit of a risk with this group in that I'm about making things practical. And I want you to walk out today with a couple real engagement tools that you can leverage, even tomorrow. I'm also going to bring in some content around the why, right? So like, why is change hard, right? Like, why do people behave the way they do? At the end of the day, I'm a people scientist in business. And we're going to talk about what, right? So what's the what around it? How do we do it? We're going to make it real practical, give you just 3 practical things, and then we're going to leave some really good time for Q&A, and I'm bringing a tool to you that we use for crowdsourcing. And it's a way to take bias out. It's a way to hear every single voice in the room. And when I say the room, I mean the virtual and physical, because we live in a hybrid world now. And so I'm taking a little bit of a chance. We're not going to use the Wova app. We're going to use some different technology that I think you'll find pretty intriguing. Part of my role in an organization when going through any transformation, including digital transformation, changing mindsets around data, is to make the invisible visible. Okay, so that's what we're here to talk about today. So thank you for allowing me to take some chances and some risk. I will say this, I have plan B and plan C for everything. So we'll figure it out together. And I'm curious, how many folks are on the call? You know, okay, perfect, don't know. All right, well, we're gonna find out. Okay, so first tool I would love for you guys to use. This is something that you can download yourself. It's very, very cheap and super easy to use. Quick engagement survey. So I've got 2 questions. I just want to get a quick pulse. And I'm going to answer that question, how many people are in this collective room that we're sharing? So I see most of you are doing the QR code, taking a picture. You can type in menti.com, and there's a code as well. And I'm going to flip. Look at that, it's already happening. It's already happening. Hey, look at that. Okay, so the first question is, where do you live? Just put a little pin in it. I'm curious as to the globalness, if you will. Yep, you got it. The code. 3669636. So many ways nowadays to do this. Okay. Yep, you bet. Let me just go back. Actually, the code. Oh yeah, the code's right here. Yeah, thank you. Right here. 41774485. There you go. All right, we've got 22 folks already, and it looks like in the room, quick count, maybe 25. So I'm guessing we have a good number, hopefully attending virtually as well. Now we've got a few coming in from Europe. I like it. Looks like we've got one down in Africa. Okay. This is what I suspected is a pretty nice swath across the globe. I like to know who I'm speaking with and approximately how many. Okay, we've got 27. Let's go to the next question. So only one more question. And this is a little bit of how familiar are you with these concepts, right? So I'm kind of trying to gauge the audience and make it a little bit fun at the same time. It's the same code. Hopefully the question has progressed on your mobile app, and it looks like it has for a lot of folks. And I'm curious if you're like, what are you even talking about? If you're on that end of the spectrum, or if you're like, I'm a boss in this space. I got this. I've done it. I've seen it, and I understand the connection to ROI. Okay, we've got 21. Okay, a lot of folks in the middle. For the data scientists, I'm not sure, is this the distribution that you would expect? So in the middle is what we're looking at, which is fun. Good. Okay. Thank you for playing. So that's something that you can use in any session that you're running, town halls, Q&As, really easy to get quick snapshots. I love this one. Let's get back to the content. Thank you for sharing. Let's talk a little bit about the why. And one of my colleagues who, ironically, is speaking right now in another room, Doug Laney, who has written 2 books, Infonomics and Data Juice. I grabbed this one from him, right? And all I did was add the picture to the right of the people, right? And so, yes, investors and customers look at organizations that are product savvy, and or even better, info product companies, and they value them higher. But at the end of the day, you only get to that if the people are doing the things you need them to do, right? So that's the secret sauce. It's all about the people, and we've got to concentrate on the people side of the equation because it's super easy, right? Who wants change? We all do. Really? No, we don't want to do it. It sounds good. It sounds good. And I'm sure many of you are in the spot, especially when you're coming at it from a data governance perspective, right? Who wants to be governed, right? It sounds like a policing function, right? So how we think about change and how we bring that to the organization needs to be considered. But I'm not going to leave the term ROI just yet. Believe it or not, folks like me who are change practitioners, we have an association as well. It's called the Association for Change Management Professionals. It's a global association that was formed in 2011. We too have a BOK book, right? Like how to do change management. There's a certification, right? This is a profession. This is things that we do. And I share that with you because we too do studies on the value and the effectiveness of change. And study after study indicates that if you do it well, not if you do it well, right? You're going to see a higher return on your investment. And really for my entire career, I've been using a kind of rule of thumb, and I'm so happy to have a bunch of studies now that confirm it, somewhere between 10 and 15%, 15 to 20, depending on your organization, how complex, all that kind of good stuff. And so I want to share just a really quick, simple tool with you. Again, you can access online. I'm just going to go for the 15% right in the middle. And this is a little bit of my litmus test with an organization. Are we investing enough when it comes to the people side? And I'll ask executives, how much are you paying for this entire data strategy program? When you include the tools and the technology and the governance, it's not cheap, right? So a lot of times, big global organizations, 20 million, 30 million. How much are you spending of that? How much are you investing of that on the people? I can do math real quick in my head on that, and it kind of blows our mind a little bit, like how much? But here's the interesting thing. It's an insurance policy. You actually do need to spend that to get the return at the end of the day. So I want to share, for those of you in kind of that thinking mode, like how do I know? There's only 4 factors you need to ask. And this is an organizational question. And so if you're kind of just starting out, if you're midway and kind of running into some people, resistance, adoption, whatever word you want to use, issues, maybe take a look at this very quick little quiz that we have online. So 4 questions. 1, level of change experience within your team. Of those team members, how much time is allocated to your initiative? If it's 5%, 10%, right, you're probably not getting the best. Do you have a change management methodology that's already ingrained in your organization that you use? Don't make it up again, please. I'm a consultant, guys. I will never bring a methodology to you. Like, what do you have? If you don't have anything, great, we got one, right? But let's reinforce what you're trying to do from an organizational perspective. And then finally, the budget question. So how much are you allocating to change? And then, it kind of spits this out. That's great. It's based on one of the ProSci studies. ProSci, for folks who don't know, is a research body around change management. So if you ever need best in class benchmarking statistics, that's really the group that we use. So that'll give you a sense of what that looks like. So those are the 4 questions you should be asking, whether it's your team or your organization. Are we investing enough on the people side to get that return we're after? Okay. Makes sense, hopefully. Okay. Practical tools, invisible, visible. Okay, let's talk about this word change. And it was really interesting. Through the WOVA app, I did a poll. When I say the word change or transformation, what feelings come to mind? What feelings come to mind? And it was interesting. I don't know if you guys have access to the poll. I think you do on your app. I didn't get a lot of feelings. I got a lot more like mission critical and keep pushing. It was more action oriented, which I'm not surprised based on the audience, right? Because this is the group really trying to push change into the organization. Well, typically when I talk about change in big groups, and I have my change rock here with me, it's very important, we get a lot of feelings. And feelings, by the way, is the number 1 F word in business, feelings. And if you don't address the feelings, you're going to be in trouble because they're real. So typically you get words like fear, scared, concerned, worried, I don't believe it, I don't understand it, right? And you get folks who are like, opportunity, super cool, I'm jazzed, I'm excited. So my analogy to change is change rocks. It's both hard and soft because it rocks, because it's exciting, right? And you've got to speak to both sides of that equation. Okay. Okay. I don't even have to read this to you guys. This is how change actually happens, and it's really, really messy. I personally am a little bit of a control freak. I think that's why I went into the business of change. How can I make it less messy for others, right? How can we accelerate others' journey through something that could be really messy if not managed? And again, here's the feelings part. Change is a process. And here's the thing, you can't skip the steps. You can go real quick through the steps sometimes for some people, but it's a process that we need to recognize that everyone goes through. So I get a lot of relief when I think about invisible, visible, and I think black and white. Here's the process, here it is. Everyone's gonna go through it, and dare I ask sometimes where people are on the change journey. To measure the reality of this change curve, I do it all the time, right? Like, where are you? Anonymously, I'm not gonna, right? It's anonymous. Where are you? I love working with leaders. Where are you? Where do you think your teams are? Huh. Okay, interesting. This will happen. We experience it every day. And the key is doing it with them, not to them. just a little bit of biology. Again, I'm a scientist, but in a very different way, right? Behavior, people. And at the end of the day, anything that's net new in our brains, our biology, is set to go error. That's wrong. That's not right. That's how our brain perceives change. And this helps me too sometimes when I get frustrated with folks who are like, they're not like, come on, get with the program, get on board. The train's left. Okay, step back. This is how we're wired as humans. It's okay. We've all heard of the amygdala. Okay, that's probably the only brain function that we need to know when it comes to change, because this is the thing that goes on fire. And when you get bad behavior, it's the thing that sometimes takes over. My best analogy of the amygdala: you're driving in a car, nobody's with you, you're just driving along. Somebody in front of you stops really quickly. What do? What's your instinct? What's your natural reaction? What does everybody do?
Slam on the brake and cuss at them.
Okay, I'm gonna go for slam on the brake, maybe cuss at them, perhaps. Slam on the brake and nobody's with you, right? It's this weird natural, maybe there's the groceries there, I don't know, but usually there's nobody there. Maybe there is, maybe there's not. It's a natural instinct. That's the amygdala. That's how quick it happens. Okay? Feels like we're making logical decisions, but this isn't logical if there's nobody beside me. All right, so emotions are contagious. And I'm going to prove that to you in a very scientific way. Seeing is believing. Every time I see it, I can't stop laughing either, and I've been watching your reactions, and it's almost impossible. It's infectious. And there are scientific studies that actually prove, oops, please hold, that prove, there we go, that emotions are contagious. And I'm very cognizant of that. When you walked in today, there was music. You caught the music. You were dancing already, right? Emotions are contagious. And so I'm trying to be upbeat, right? Keep you guys with me. Imagine if you've got a data governance committee meeting, right? Maybe it's all virtual, maybe it's a hybrid, super exciting things, right? And you walk in and you're the leader, and you walk in with one of these, oh, my last meeting. Oh, right, you feel that, it's a cloud, and it infects everybody, right? So emotions are super contagious, and we need to be aware of them and use them to our benefit when we think about change. So just a couple truths. These are the things we know about change. It's hard sometimes for most of us. A lot of caveats to that, right? What I mean by that, some people love it. Some people thrive on it, and they move through that change curve super quick, and others get stuck. And to that point, it's our job to unstick them, to recognize they're stuck and give them some ways by which to unstick. I think I've heard in a couple different of the breakout sessions around change fatigue. It's real, right? And so in today's environment, how do we get people's attention and keep it? It's messy, it's unpredictable, which is why I love Agile. Agile and change work really well together. That's kind of the whole point. So that's a lovely thing. And at the end of the day, if you're an executive and you're of the mindset that build it and people will come, I wish you luck, because people will not come. They don't like to be told what to do. What they love to do is figure it out for themselves. Okay? So with that, I'm going to maybe take the words change management, and I'd like to maybe refine that to change leadership, right? This is really a leader opportunity, and a leader isn't necessarily someone with the right title. It can be, but not always. It can be an influencer that has the right domain expertise, that's been with the organization for a long time. And I want to think about change leadership, something required. And again, I always go back to data, statistics. This is again from one of my favorite benchmarking studies. This has been done since 1998, global study. And every single year, the number one thing is executive sponsorship, visible and active executive sponsorship, which we all know that, right? But how does that show up? Are we helping our executives kind of do those right sponsoring activities? Are we thinking through what we want them to be doing for our program and feeding that information to them? Hey, can you come to this meeting? Hey, here's an email. Would you mind sending this? Hey, in your next town hall, can we have 5 minutes? And you kick it off. And then the last one, which I'm not sure why it's last, because I think to me, talk about secret sauce, middle managers, they're like the often missed. We always get the executives because, listen, they have to fund the budgets, right? They have to say yes to the overall initiative. But we always forget that middle layer. That middle layer is the secret sauce. If I were to say one thing, it's concentrating on that middle layer. And not just a little bit, like a lot of it. Okay, what if you had sessions across all your functional domains around leading through this effort, this data program strategy that you're running? How do you talk about it? What are the benefits? What are some of the obstacles we anticipate? And having them put it in their own words to their own teams and thinking through what kind of questions am I going to get? What kind of questions do I have? And what are the really hard questions my team is going to have? That takes time, energy, and effort. Because this is the way we wished it was, but the reality, again, is there's a process. I do like to use humor in anything change related. Helps with the brevity. Okay, one more analogy, the marathon effect. Anyone here done a 5K? I don't care if it's walk race. Okay, anyone here done like the big ones, like a half marathon? Some of the big, like the Peachtree Run in Atlanta, some of the really big ones. That's the picture on the left. These big events, thousands and thousands of people come. I've done a few, and I'm real slow. Okay, when you sign up for these events, they have you estimate kind of which group are you going to be in? Are you the first group? Like, are you going to be timed? Is this a thing? Are you trying to win? Or are you maybe towards the back? I'm always at the back. And I've never actually been at the front. I should think about that. But what's fascinating when you are at the back in these really big programs, and I like to have this analogy of big global organizations, right, is that sea of people on the left. The folks who are in it, right, the folks who this is important to them, they're at the front, they take off. Usually there's some sort of music and there's maybe a gun or a siren or something, right, to alert everyone, okay, the race has started, go, because that every second matters. When you're in the back and you're as slow as I am, you might not even hear that. You literally may not even hear it. And what happens is there's this interesting like rumbling that starts to go through the crowd. Like, hey, I think it started. Did it start? Did it start? Did it start? I think it started. Like, are we, okay, and you're still not moving. It can take 20 minutes for the folks at the back to actually even get to the point where they're starting their race, where they're starting to cross the start line. What's happening with the folks at the beginning? Who knows where they are? They're like, psh, right? So that's the analogy. And here's the common myth, right? If you're at the front, if you're an executive, you know why we're doing this, you get it, build it, they will come, get on board. The natural thing is I've kicked this thing off, awesome. I'm done. I go to the finish line and I get my bagel, my protein, my beer, whatever you're gonna drink, right? You take care of yourself. Here's the flip I want you to think about. As leaders in change leadership, we're typically in the front end of that pack, right? When you cross that finish line, yes, you need to take care of yourself, hydrate, get your protein, do your things, get your carbs, but then you've got to come back. You have to circle back to the rest of your team members and encourage them along the way. Maybe be the person who hands them an extra glass of water along that marathon. Okay, so it's just a really easy analogy to think about so many, and this happens to me as a leader all the time. I'll call myself on and like, ooh, I'm in the marathon effect. Okay, this was my idea. I'm way ahead, right? I need to bring others along the journey with me. So just a super easy analogy because this happens all the time and we don't recognize it. All right, well, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Enough of the science, the geeky stuff. Okay, 3 must-have ingredients for behavior to change in big organizations. And I will say I have changed these 3 things over time, so I might add a 4th, but we'll see how it goes. It's really hard to distill into a couple things, right? Because it's a big and. All these things need to happen in unison and tandem, and why an investment in this space is required to be successful. So first one is a compelling vision. I'm going to kind of double click on each one of these, and then I've got examples that I can share towards the end as well when we open it up for Q&A. So compelling vision, and I've heard a lot about that, I think during the breakouts so far. Creative movement might be a little bit of a different way to think about how to apply change management to your effort, and then how to make it stick. Okay, compelling vision. I'm super curious, and I've heard a couple different breakouts talk about what do you call the thing you're doing, right? Like, is it the data strategy program? Whee! DSP, let's go for it. That rocks, DSP, that's what it is. I don't know, right? I've heard of, modernization program, data monetization. I've heard modernization, right? Like there's all these things that we can call something, right? And at the end of the day, I don't care what you call it, but you need to be thoughtful about what you call it. It's your narrative, right? Control that narrative and involve others in what you call it. It's a really easy concept. It's not crazy. What you call it matters. I was just in Donna's breakout before here. She was talking about heart and mind. This is where, what kind of industry you're in, what kind of culture your organization has. It's important. What do you call this thing you're doing? You're going to be on a few-year journey, and you don't want people to forget. You need to make it sticky. You need to make it relevant and exciting, right, to the organization that you're within. So I'm curious, how many folks here have gone through a branding exercise for your change strategy program, like a literal branding, marketing exercise? Anybody? I'm not seeing any hands in the room. Yeah, we do that, and we bring people in, right? Again, like we could do it to people, or we could bring it in, and they can help articulate in their own words what will resonate with their teams, right? So let them name it, let them own it. Heart and brain, again, depending on what organization you're in, like you've got to know the culture, right? If you're in healthcare, right? Go to that North Star. The mission is always something really important to anchor into, right? If you're in a for-profit, right? It might be a little bit more on the brain, the financials, but it needs to be a mix and a blend of heart and mind. Make it simple. We've used storytelling as a really powerful, effective tool. I've heard a lot around like data literacy and build a data literacy program and all that kind of good stuff. Yes, and make it simple. We've used recipe analogies, right? How do you describe like tools like a snowflake or a Realtio to someone who's never heard of them? What is that? Well, let's bring up a recipe analogy that we can all understand. Maybe it's a library catalog, right? But what's something that we can all understand that simplifies and starts to make meaning to all these tools and processes and systems and why we're doing, we all know it, but how do I describe it in layman's terms? And then make it real with positive proof points. If I've heard one thing in every session I've been in, and I love this, is agile use cases. Make it real. Pick 1 or 2 that are going to be compelling and build on those. Build your champions, right? With those success stories. And even if you have some failures along the way, you learn from them, come back, right? from an iterative, agile perspective. And then we're going to talk a little bit about fun, rewards, and experiences, because at the end of the day, that's how you motivate people. Number 2 is create a movement. I completely stole this graph, by the way. This is like a technology adoption curve. We've all seen this, right? But I want to use it because it applies. What I think is really interesting in my profession, it seems really gray, it seems big, it seems ominous. It's not. We use data science within change management. What I mean by that is I'm going to apply some analytic tools to understand my audience, right? You think of those runners, hundreds of thousands of people. Who are they? Who do I care about? What do I do? There are tools in the market that we can use to bring in organizational data and start to make sense of it. And at the end of the day, listen, it's all about creating advocates and perhaps flipping a resistor or two. So I think it was Amy from, I think it was yesterday's session. She talked about courageous executive sponsorship. And I'm going to give you an example of that. And again, please know, I like to bring humor and levity into these conversations. And I'm from Seattle. So this particular video I'm going to show you is filmed at the Gorge, which is in South Washington. All right. Please hold.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not 2 nuts, 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that at TED.
I'd like to bring that one in. It kind of makes this come to life in a really tangible way. That's what we're looking to do. And the complexities come in numbers, locations, individual people, perception, biases. It can feel complicated. But there are tools and methods, again, to demystify stakeholder analysis. Listen, you can do one in Excel, you can do one in a tool, right? There's an approach, there's a way to get ahead of this. And so I constantly think about, like, how are we creating a movement, an inertia, energy within an organization towards treating data as an asset, So create a movement, and then finally, I've heard this actually in quite a few presentations over the last couple days, and I'm excited. This maybe is a little bit of a different frame, but when you want to make something stick, so this is a framework that we use to understand change capability within an organization. In general, right? Whatever you're throwing their way, going to the cloud, we're buying a new company, we're reorging, whatever it is, new strategy, new direction, new leader, whatever transformation is coming, this is how we look in an organization and say, gosh, are we building that capability internally? Are we building resiliency? So the next time we do something big, it's less scary. It's more normal. And so you'll probably see the questions that we asked around, are you investing in change in the right ways, is very much centered around this. The one I want to call out is the word embed. We have so many tools at our dispense, if you will, within an organization, and they usually live in the HR function. And I've heard so many people making these connections, and it gives my heart great joy, because this is another, in my opinion, part of the secret sauce. So think about talent management processes, and how do you take the concepts around data as an asset and start to build it into how you hire, how you recruit, how you train, how you promote, how you set goals, how you recognize and reward individuals. And I recently had an executive say to me, but Beth, that seems way too big. Like that's big. Like, I don't own that. That's HR stuff. I don't own that function. I'm like, you don't. However, you can leverage the heck out of it, right? If you've got a data governance council, whatever you call it, again, have them brand it, not you, whatever they call themselves. If you're doing OKRs, how is that built in? If you're doing SMART goals, whatever it is, what are the goals for that particular group? Build it into some of the natural performance management processes, goal setting. In my review, does it show up in my review? Do we even talk about it in my review? Does it affect my bonus? Ooh, that's a good one, right? How do I make it very tangible and very real? And here's the easiest one to leverage. Most big organizations these days have some kind of reward and recognition system or program, okay? Use it, right? There's a lot of new tools on the market that I've seen organizations use where you can recognize someone, an email goes to their leaders and to anyone else that you might want them to know about. It might give you points. It might give you points that equate to dollars and you go shopping, right? There's lots of good programs that are already in your organization. You don't have to recreate it. Tap into it. Tap into it. So to me, embed is often the most overlooked piece from a change perspective and what we need to focus on. So from here, I'm going to take a little bit of a different tact. I do have some examples depending on what kind of questions you guys have. But listen, I don't know what's top of mind for you guys. I think we've got about 20-ish on the online. So let's say we've got maybe a group of 50 to 70 folks participating. I have no idea what's top of mind. So what I'd like to do is use a tool with you. That's a crowdsourcing tool. And what we're going to do is we are literally going to see what is on your brains and the brains of the folks participating virtually. We're going to see it real time, and we're going to quickly prioritize what are the most questions that this group has. And I'll start with those questions, okay? So this is where I get a little bit dangerous, but we're going to try it, okay? We're not doing WOVA. We're not doing the typical Q&A. Because what happens in a typical Q&A? The person who's brave and raises their hand and grabs a mic is the voice that's heard, right? But is that the question everyone wanted to hear? Don't know. So we're going to do a little bit different. We're using a tool called Collab. It's by a company called Thought Exchange. You can use it with up to 100,000 stakeholders. It's pretty cool. So we're going to use it real time. And there's one question I'm going to ask you. Where do you get stuck on the people side of the ROI equation? What questions do you have for me, basically, right? Where do you get stuck? That's going to be the thoughts you're going to share are in questions. And I want you to pay attention to ranking these questions. Think of like the typical 5-star, right? You're going to see everybody's thoughts. It's going to come up on your mobile app. And you get to star or rank their thoughts. How important it is to you. Give it a 1 if you're like, I really could care less about this one. Psh, take it off. Give it a 5 if you're like, this needs to be top of the list. We've got to have time in this presentation to answer it. And give it a 3 if you're somewhere in the middle. Here's what I'll commit to you, is this tool can also allow me to do a frequently asked questions. Based on everyone's queries, I commit to making comments and sending it back out to the group. So I will answer all the questions. It may take me a little bit of time, give me till next week, but I will have a PDF that you can see every question that was asked with a response. Okay? So this is a great tool to take out bias, to allow everybody to have a voice in the process, and to quickly understand what's most important versus what was said the loudest. Should be pretty simple. It's anonymous, by the way, and confidential. You'll get some instructions on your app. Oh, can you not get the QR code? www.tejoin.com. And I can never see anything. You want me to, actually, can I, oh, look at that. Oh, hey, technology can be of assistance. All right, I'm in the dashboard so folks can kind of see live. We've got 28 folks logged in. We have one thought coming in, which is really in the form of a question. That's fine, we're gonna get more. And we'll start to see some ratings in just a short time. And when I say invisible, visible, I mean it. We're literally watching everybody participating physically and virtually right now on the screen. Clearly, the little people icons are individuals in the tool, sharing and rating. The little Post-it notes are the thoughts. And the magic is in the intersections. People starting to look at other people's questions. Is this important to me or not? That's the intersection I'm after. I want to know from 50 people what's top of mind. And that's how we're going to facilitate Q&A. We're just going to give it a couple minutes. I got 37 people participating, 22 questions, over 100 ratings. By the way, there's AI behind this thing too, which is really cool. So you can do very quick theming, analysis, and reporting. It's one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just gonna give it one more minute. right, great. We're gonna close it for right now. We're gonna work with what we've got. Thank you so much for sharing. And I don't know for folks who are watching on the screen, like the number one thing kept shifting, but there were some themes, right, that are coming out really quickly. Pace of change, right, can be slow and hard in some organizations. I think about that creating a movement, like how do you sustain that energy? And in my mind, it does go back to, do you have the right team in place, right, kind of invested in keeping that energy alive? If you can connect it to big corporate, right, kind of goals and importance, that too will keep the energy alive. If we can connect it to things that are important to the senior leaders, to the executives in an organization. There's one question here that I saw come up around our data programs don't have a lot of time. And what I might say is, what that says to me is there's not a proper level of investment, right? If you're not having the right amount of time dedicated to data programs, we're probably not looking at the investment side of that equation in the right way. So maybe there's some work to do kind of from an executive buy-in to there is a cost to getting that return. Resistance to change, lack of accountability. Accountability has come up in a lot of sessions around governance, and I've seen lots of very, very creative accountability measures. I've heard of contracts being signed, and I've actually literally used DocuSign before, right, as a very literal mechanism to track. This is the agreement. You own this data. Here's how you're going to show up to this role, maybe of a data steward, right? Again, depends on your industry. It depends on your culture of your organization. That works for some, doesn't work for others, right? You've done it also where you get people together, right? All your data stewards, your champions, whatever they're calling themselves, right? And they all, kind of come up, here's our guiding principles. We're gonna co-create this together. We're gonna be accountable. And then please, the only way to sustain it is put it into the goals, right? Put it into people's goals, and then make sure when performance review comes around, you're acknowledging that, and in some way, shape, or form, it's showing up in that review process, and hopefully you can then reward them appropriately for their role in the organization. Resistance is a really interesting thing. It's a very personal thing, and I teach a whole thing around how to manage resistance, because it's a thing. And here's my question. Do you all in your organizations have that kind of skill building opportunity for middle managers especially? Because guess what? Not only are they going to resist it, but their people are. If you don't equip your middle managers with some of these concepts on how to manage resistance, they're going to be surprised by it. They're not going to know what to do. And this is typically where these programs lose steam. Well, I don't know what they're doing. Nobody told me. I have no idea what this thing is, right? So we actually have curriculum built around how do you lead through change? And how do you anticipate resistance? Because guess what? You're going to get it. We went through all the brain stuff. It's how we're wired. It's normal, expected, and anticipated. And guess what? I actually love it. Why do I love resistance? It's actually my absolute most favorite behavior when it comes to change. Anybody? It's better than apathy. It's better than apathy. They're engaging. They're engaging. And if you remember that change curve and the feelings, sometimes, right, you got to go through the skepticism and the questioning and the, this is silly, why are we doing this? It makes no sense to me. You have to go through those phases before you can get to the other side. You can't skip them. And that likely shows up as resistance. So resistance, I look forward to. I anticipate it. I know when I start getting pushback, we're starting to build awareness. We're starting to get traction with our messaging. Sorry. Where's my mouse? There it is. Okay. Vulnerability and courage. I like that question. Powerful. Okay. Yep. So a lot of this is sort of power structures, influence, if you will. I think to build a culture of vulnerability, and I'm guessing that's around the theory of we're experimenting, we're going to have some failures. And that's anticipated, known, expected. However, we have to learn from them and not repeat them, right? That's the whole point, right? So how do we build that in? And this is where the naked dancing person is what I'll say. And trust me, I'm not an HR person. So you don't have to take your shirt off. But the good news is that courageous leader needs to be the one to stand up and recognize, you know what? We went down this path. We didn't experiment because that's what we're here to do. We learned from it, and here's what we're doing next time, or here's how that's going to feed the next use case, right? The next product we're developing. It's okay, but it's got to come from a leadership level. And again, everyone has different values, right? Each organization has a different list of values that are meaningful and important to you. Tap into those. Tap into those ways of working that are already ingrained. And if you have something like take risk, right, or fail fast as a corporate value, growth mindset, continuous learning, right? Like there's so many buzzwords around those kind of things. Tap in. And how do you handle vocal, powerful change resistors? So many ways. First, it depends on kind of where they sit in the organization, right? What role do they have and how much influence do they have? I always think about carrot and stick, right? There's positive ways to influence folks, and sometimes you have to go the stick route, and it sucks, but sometimes you have to do it. So I'll give you an example. Early on in my career, I had a leader that was really not comfortable with a transformation change, specifically kind of starting out this data strategy program, just not comfortable at all. And we were working with the entire C-suite. We had each C-suite member prepare a written statement on why this program was important to them. So talk about accountability. Like it's one thing to like think about it, but no, I actually want to see it in writing because at whatever town hall, whatever big company meeting we're having, I would like you to get up and speak to that. And we're probably going to use it as testimonials for a newsletter. Like we're going to leverage. So you only have to write it once and speak to it. Well, you want to talk about accountability? I had a leader who said, well, I'm not going to do that. And I said, that's fine. Just know your boss and all your peers already have and are prepared to stand up. So that's completely your choice. So I don't like that tactic, right? But it worked, right? It worked for the initial phase. Now that was not the end, right? When you've got folks who are resisting, really understanding them as a person, what motivates them as an individual. Sometimes you might have to go to their boss, right? Again, is it goals? Is it bonus? Is it promotion? Is it recognition? Like what's the thing that's going to motivate that individual? And who knows that individual, right? Everyone has their sphere of influencers, right? Who is that individual's sphere of influencers? And can we get to them to help change mindset? So change is messy and it's very individualized. And I don't like to be surprised by things, right? So I'm gonna be super conscientious and I'm gonna run a constant analytics, if you will, in the organization. Like where are people? Who are our champions? Where are resistors? It's okay to have resistors as long as we're creating that movement. You may not get that last 3%, 5% across the line. It's okay. Worry about the 80%, the 90%. Pay attention to resistors when you believe if you spend more time with them, because typically it's just, I don't understand. You haven't brought me along personally. You haven't made me important in this journey. If you spend more time with them and you think you can flip them, they will be 10 advocates for you at the end of the day, right? So if you can flip one or two, spend the time, it's worth it. And just, kind of go by past behavior, right? Is this someone that, again, with some logic applied, we can flip them? And if not, like move on and find more folks that you can start to build that coalition with. People's fear of losing control or power, that's a real one. And I think especially when it comes to, when it comes to like words automation, right? And now with all this AI buzz, like, is my job safe? I mean, at the end of the day, folks, that's what people care about. Like, is my job safe? Is this gonna be good for my job or bad for my job? Right? Is this gonna provide me with opportunity, or am I gonna have to go elsewhere? Right? That's the net. And I think understanding, again, and tapping into some of those talent management processes, here's why it's important to you, here's how it's important to your career. I'd be super curious to know if folks have competencies built around data capabilities as part of your normal competencies from an HR process. If not, again, that's another hook. Like, we expect the entire organization to have these capabilities over time. And here's a learning program to get there. Okay. Resistors spreading their negative attitudes, you got to find them first, and you got to know what's happening, and then figure out again, how can we influence them? And how do we get to the people they're influencing, right? It sounds easy, and it's not. I know I've got just a few more minutes. I'm just gonna see if there's, automating themselves out of a job, yep. Yeah, and I think the automating themselves out of a job, I've heard a lot of, well, now you'll be able to do value-added work, right? And it's kind of insulting in some ways, like, so the work I'm doing today isn't a value add, thanks, right? So how do you reframe that to make it real? We like to create experiential experiences for people to kind of move them into the art of the impossible. If I can't see it again, how can I start to see it or feel it? And one of the tricks in these experiential experiences is you put your business leaders, those could be folks from your data council, it could be your executives, it could be a combo, both business and IT, you put them together and you have them create an event, it can be virtual, it can be in person, it can be hybrid, to explain one of your use cases and how it maps into your data architecture and all these cool tools that are used. And you connect the dots for a bigger audience. But I'll tell you what, the minute you put your business and your data person side by side, arm in arm, to explain to people a use case and how it leveraged your current ecosystem and the return it got, there is nothing more powerful than that act, right? When you have to present it, you know your stuff. And if you don't know it, you're gonna know it real quick, okay? So those are just some of the secret, I think, sauces, lessons learned, and then I'm gonna show you one last thing just to kind of leave you with a thought, if I can get to it here. Okay, there we go. Hopefully. There we go. I've got, can I share just like two fun, okay, so when it comes to accountability and building trust, especially in data, I had one client who used a stamp of approval, and we educated the executive team. Anytime you get a report, dashboard, BI report, like whatever it is, you ask these 7 questions of the people bringing it to you, and you give it the stamp of approval. If they can't answer it, they've got to go back to answer it. So we build trust, right? So stamp of approvals are kind of a fun way too. Again, we measure. That was the 4th thing I almost wanted to add, but didn't have time. There's a whole approach on how do you measure readiness, adoption for change. And then finally, this is we all have something like this, right? For our big data strategy programs, whatever we call them. You've got a center of excellence, you've got a data governance council, you've got the executive team, right? All the things. A couple things I want to point out to you on this one is having the names on here, right? This is actually a real slide from a real client that had lots of names on it. Every single piece of this has a business and tech owner, arm in arm, and it was selected by each functional domain executive. They selected their key lieutenant. Sometimes there was 2 if it was big enough, that's fine. They selected their key lieutenant. And this is I think where the investment comes in. So notice up here, there's a support team, whole support team. Program management and finance, right? Like if you want to talk about ROI, you've got to measure it proactively in order to get ahead of that question your executive might ask. I've spent a lot of money on data stuff. What's my return? You actually need to have a support team. And I beg you, hire a change management professional. That's what we're here for. That is what will make the difference. And then in every single one of these, it was business, technology, a program manager, and a change manager. Not always full time, like you had a person and you might put them across a couple different ones. But when I talk about investment in time and attention and capabilities, having this kind of setup is going to help get that R in your ROI. And then if you want some real fun and gamify, right? Like we can do really neat things in an organization. This is a healthcare company. And what I loved about this, we did this pre-COVID, and it was with their data analytics team. And it had nothing to do with technology. It was all about capabilities and really breaking through to innovative ideas and having the business work with the analyst more closely together in a collaborative way. Long story short, we incented folks to go through this Level Up program. It was very purposely and explicitly curated. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Show us you did it. You get points, you move up, you get a badge, all the things that come with gamification. At the end of the day, the reward was the teams that the executive team kind of felt won the most innovative idea. They were sent to a really cool conference. That had never happened before. And they were able to take a +1 with them. That's pretty cool, right? Now I'm tapping into the family unit, and I get to bring somebody with me. Super, super cool from a motivation perspective. And the best part of this is when COVID struck, they had already built dashboarding capabilities because it was one of the innovation ideas that came through, and they were prepared to manage it at a national level. Had they not done a program like this to unlock the capabilities, they would not have had that ready for COVID. So that's a great story. I think that's my time. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for your time and effort and letting me do something a little different.